Okay, so step one is entering all of the information you've gathered from your surveys into Excel. So what we're going to do is set it up so that your question and your answers are easy to see when they're displayed, and that they're in the right format in order for you to create a graph. So you're going to have your yes or your no answer. Well, it depends on what your answers were for your question. So if you have your question in there, then the next columns over are your answers. So the other thing that I'm typing here is how many people that I talked to in total. And what this is going to allow me to do is play around with some formulas in Excel. And one of those formulas is the sum formula. Yes, sum as in two numbers added together, just like we talk about in class all the time. So I'm going to use the equal sign and then type in what I want it to do. If I want it to sum, I'm going to type in sum. We can also type in average, a whole list of different types of things for Excel, which is pretty neat. The total is not necessarily needed for our graph, but it's something that I want you to see within Excel, so you could maybe use it for another project or something else that you end up doing. So then I'm going to take what I just did in cell B3 was I took the total number of yeses and I made that a percentage. And how I did that was I took the total number of yeses divided by the total number that I had, and it gave me the decimal version for that number. And I carried that over to cell C3. But what I had to do was adjust what it was picking up. So it had moved my total over to a cell that didn't exist, and I had to fix that. Now with the format for each cell, I'm changing it to a percent with 0 decimal places. So now we have all our data in Excel, our total number of people who responded in each category and their values as a percent. And now we have to pick our graph. You're going to select and highlight all your information, and then you go to the tab labeled Insert at the top. And this is going to give you a variety of graphs to choose. Now it's going to be your job to pick which graph will best represent your data, whether it's a line graph, a bar graph, a pie chart, a scatter plot. This is where you are going to make the decision based on what we've discussed in class before. So pick your graph. Now, there are some other things that are really neat with Excel that'll let you do so many other things. Obviously, making a graph is just one of those things, but there are tons and tons and tons of different things you can do with Excel. So you can change the type of graph after you've picked one. You know, if you weren't all that happy or you thought of a better way to represent your data. So I just clicked on a random bar graph one, and that doesn't exactly tell me what to do anything because of it's got this extra little section up there. So I'm going to stick with the pie chart because I think it represents very well what I want to portray, is that the majority of people that I talked to had cell phones. You can also go to the data selection and you can change what data you have on each axes, the Y versus the X. And I know we've talked about that before in class, and I know you've built and created graphs for science and different things in there. So the nice thing is, whatever you do, you can always undo it. So I can just switch them back, or I can end up hitting undo or just canceling out of there, and there still is the original graph that I created, which is pretty nice. There's also the option to adjust the title. the different layouts. You can change the position of things. You can change the key. You can change the colors. You can change a whole lot of things. I like the contrast between the red and the blue. But you will change all the stuff with your graph under the chart tools and the layout options. So because I'm limited in a pie graph right now, I don't really have axes to change. So there's not a whole lot I can do with a pie graph. I can show my data. I can, have things in different places. But a pie graph is pretty much just a pie graph. It's nice because the computer does all the calculating for you as to what percentage of the circle is going to be the 60% and what percentage of the circle is going to be the 40%, and I don't have to get out fancy tools and a compass and a protractor and all that stuff, which of course we could do by hand, but for this we don't really need to. So just looking at some different things, you could change the background color. We don't want that one because you lose what you're looking at in your pie chart. Nope. Yep. Ooh, that one's kind of cool. I think I'm just going to leave it the way that it came up initially, which isn't all that bad. It's very easy to tell that over half do have a cell phone. And yeah, that's pretty much where I'm going to leave it. But you are more than welcome to keep playing with your own graphs until you find something that you want to use for your presentation. Now, you don't have to create two graphs. Obviously, this is a different question. I wanted to give you, within this tutorial video, a different example of a graph with some different things that you can do. So, I threw up some numbers in there of your class birthdays, who has a birthday in what month. And I want to look at these axes options before you go and try some things on your own. So, within Excel, it sets some default things and you can change those. Nothing is ever set in stone. So I didn't like the option that it gave to go by twos because some of the months had 3 birthdays and I wanted to show that on its own. So I can adjust what is the increment for the horizontal axis, and now you can see that it's in increments of 1. So you get a line for 1, you get a line for 3, rather than it just kind of floating in the middle. The other thing that it did automatically that I didn't like was it went in descending order. So it put December at the top of the list when December should go to the bottom of the list. So I'm going to go to my vertical axis options and I'm going to reverse the order. So now it put January at the top. But in doing that, it also put my vertical axis data across the top. So I can play with that a little bit more and manipulate that how I want to in order for it to be back at the bottom. But you might like the look of that. And as long as your information is displayed in a way that's easy for people to see, that's fine. Undeleted the key because we only have one option. It's how many people have birthdays in this month. So a key wasn't really necessary, and it allowed the graph to use more of that area. So there you have it. There's a different type of graph that you might be able to model your information with.